Hello, Michael here. Another beautiful, extremely sunny day here in Penang, Malaysia. Hardly any clouds in the sky today. But today I'd really like to focus on diligence. And diligence in the sense of it being a journey into rhythm and devotion and soul-aligned effort on our part. From a certain view, diligence is the balance between slothfulness and workaholism. Diligence is intended persistence rather than just effort. It's the art of steadily showing up, attuned to one's purpose and capacity. Diligence flows with the form of purpose rather than being frenetic nor sluggish. Fatigue, fear, and disconnection masks the resistance to momentum or slothfulness. Slothfulness may reflect inner confusion, a lack of inspiration, or just being overwhelmed. It is a shadow, really, of consciousness in which one is numbed or drifting aimlessly and lost in a dream. In the state of slothfulness, one may not engage their will and potential and be apathetic. On the other hand, workaholism amplifies activity beyond healthy boundaries. And this is to escape stillness, inner reflection, and uncomfortable feelings. Unrestrained will manifests in constant motion that masks internal emptiness while idolizing productivity and burning out. One shows up by selling out. All these are manifestations of trauma in our lives. Now, diligence harmonizes devotion with rest, action with integration, and holding intention for meaningful activity rather than compulsion. Diligence, when viewed through the lenses of Anthroposophy and Evolutionary Astrology, becomes far more than mere persistence or industriousness. For it transforms into a soul quality, a spiritual discipline, and a karmic imperative. Now, focusing on an anthroposophical view of diligence as soul development, we can see diligence is not simply a moral virtue. It's a force of spiritual will that supports the development of the higher self. It aligns with the path of inner schooling, where the soul cultivates qualities, like patience, equanimity, and devotion through one's own conscious effort. One's own. Diligence is spiritual will in action, as expressed in this steady application of will towards spiritual goals, such as moral purification, clarity of thought, and service to others. You can see diligence as karmic responsibility in that we incarnate with tasks and debts in each life. Diligence is the means by which we fulfill these tasks with humility and perseverance. Diligence is rhythmic practice, emphasized through rhythm and repetition, daily meditation, observation, and self-determined exercises. And all these are vehicles for soul transformation. And diligence, we can say, is the guardian of these rhythms. Steiner mentioned that, he said that the forces of the stellar world impel mankind into physical incarnation. And man has within himself a picture of the heavens. Now, evolutionary astrology views diligence as soul intent, something very in common with anthroposophy. Diligence is seen through the lens of Pluto and the lunar nodes. These are the symbols of soul evolution and karmic trajectory. Pluto represents the soul's deepest evolutionary intent and desire. Diligence is the commitment to face shadow material, to transform and to evolve. The south node shows past life patterns. The north node reveals the soul's growth direction. And diligence is the bridge between these two poles, right? Conscious effort to move from comfort to growth. As evolutionary astrologers, we do not see, bad placements. Every planetary and cosmic placement has spiritual intent. From an anthroposophical view, they are not abstract forces or energies, but rather forces of consciousness and willful intent. However unconscious they may be in us. Diligence is the soul's response to the challenges and gifts of its chart. So I will talk about the Saturn and the signs, okay, and showing diligence as endurance and structure, okay, looking at Saturn's expression of diligence. In Aries struggles with impulsivity and learns diligence through restraint and planned, purposeful action. Taurus is steady, patient, and materially focused, builds slowly but securely. Gemini is diligence in communication and learning, but may overthink, right? But excels in structured analysis. Cancer has emotional diligence and learns to care through boundaries, setting boundaries and self-protection. Leo's diligence is in leadership, but must temper ego with humility and responsibility. Virgo shows exceptional diligence, right, in being detail-oriented, perfection, realistic, and methodical in all they do. Libra calls for diligence in relationships and justice, seeking balance and fairness, right, through effort. Scorpio's deep inner work is possible through diligence, through emotional resilience and transformation. Sagittarius calls for philosophical diligence, right, a disciplined pursuit of truth and wisdom, and with a natural enthusiasm. Capricorn is the master of diligence, being strategic, ambitious, and built for long-term success while keeping the big picture in mind. Aquarius calls for diligence in service to humanity through structured innovation and social responsibility. Pisces calls for spiritual diligence by learning discipline through compassion and keeping emotional boundaries. Now Mars, in the signs, okay, showing diligence as drive and initiative. Okay, and Mars' expression of diligence in the different signs show up in Aries as bold and fast, diligence through action, but may lack follow-through. In Taurus, slow but steady, immense staying power and physical endurance. Gemini is very mentally agile and is diligent in so-called multitasking and verbal sparring. Cancer has a protective drive, diligence in emotional defense and nurturing. Leo is passionate and proud, diligent when inspired by recognition or creative purpose. And Virgo shows it is precise and efficient, and it's diligent in service, health, and technical mastery. In Libra, diplomatic drive shows, right? Diligence in partnership and social harmony at its best. Scorpio is intense and focused, and there's a relentless pursuit of goals which may be kept hidden. Saturn in Scorpio is the archivist, we can say, of diligence, devoted to precision ritual and the sacredness of detail, like the monk copying manuscripts by candlelight, yeah? Considering each letter as a prayer. In Sagittarius, it's adventurous, shows diligence in exploration and philosophical quests. Capricorn, supreme diligence, strategic, tireless, and goal-oriented. Mars in Capricorn is the mountain climber, right? Disciplined, strategic, and relentless. It doesn't rush, it ascends. Aquarius, innovative, diligence in reform, technology, and collective progress. Pisces, fluid and intuitive. And diligence is through emotional or artistic devotion. Now talk about the moon, emotional rhythm and inner sustenance, right, in relation to Saturn, Mars, and Pluto in the development of diligence. We need to look at moon and Venus from one perspective, okay? That the moon reflects our consciousness in daily life, our thoughts, feelings, and habits. These are determined by Venus, what we value inwardly and outwardly. Venus basically discerns between what one likes and dislikes in creating a value system, while Mars is one's desire and will put into action to manifest one's values. Saturn discerns, defines, and maintains those values and actions as one's identity. Keep all this in mind. Now, the moon shows diligence through care. The moon governs our emotional cycles and instincts and habits. Diligence here is about showing up consistently for our inner life, tending to feelings, nurturing others, and honoring the rhythms of rest and renewal. The moon teaches diligence isn't always linear, right? It's cyclical. It's the quiet persistence of daily rituals, journaling perhaps, or returning to the same emotional lesson until it's fully integrated. The moon points to the shadow of avoidance. And without diligence, the moon may fall into emotional reactivity or avoidance. And with it, we cultivate emotional maturity and resilience. Venus, shows devotion, harmony, and aesthetic discipline. It's diligence in relationship. Venus brings the practice of showing up for others with grace, patience, and beauty. It's the effort to maintain harmony, to listen deeply, and to refine our relational presence. Venus, as artistic diligence, governs art, pleasure, and values. Venusian diligence is the disciplined pursuit of beauty, whether in painting, music, or crafting. It's a life. It's crafting a life aligned with one's values. And regarding the shadow of indulgence, without diligence, Venus may seek comfort over growth. With it, she becomes the priestess of sacred refinement. Saturn is structure, responsibility, and karmic endurance. Diligence is a sacred duty. Saturn is cosmic memory, holding what our true self is, and thus is the master of long-term commitment to that self. We all have this, however unconscious. He teaches that diligence is the slow, humble work of building something that lasts, whether a legacy, a skill, or a soul. Saturn holds our boundaries of maturity. Saturn's diligence is about knowing when to say no, when to rest, when to persist. It's the wisdom of time and consequence. Now, looking at Mars, it's drive, initiative, and tactical persistence. Mars is diligence in action. bringing the fire of pursuit. The diligence of Mars is raw, physical, and immediate. Training, fighting, building, and doing. In the courage, right? With courage to continue. Mars teaches that diligence is not just about effort, though. It's about courage in the face of resistance. Pluto is transformation, power, and soul commitment. Pluto is diligence and shadow work and is subterranean. It's the relentless excavation of truth, the willingness to face death, symbolic or real, and the commitment to rebirth. Pluto is about our soul contracts that we make with ourselves and with others. Pluto reveals the karmic necessity of diligence, why we must persist even when the path is dark, because the soul demands it. Ideal expression of planetary function in diligence, yeah? The moon is emotional rhythm, care and inner consistency. Diligence through ritual, conscious habit, nurturing, and emotional resilience. Venus is devotion, refinement, and relational harmony. It is found in our diligence through beauty, loyalty, and value alignment. Mars is drive, initiative, and tactical persistence. Diligence through courage, action, and strategic pursuit. Saturn is structure, responsibility, and karmic endurance. Diligence through discipline, boundaries, and long-term commitment. Pluto is transformation, power, and soul contracts. And diligence shown through shadow work, rebirth, and relentless inner evolution. So keep all this in mind. I'm going to talk about Marilyn Monroe just in the view of diligence in her life. So in a weaving kind of way, I would like to illustrate in her life how the dynamics between Moon, Venus, Mars, Saturn, and Pluto show how diligence lived in her life and how it was undermined. She has Moon in Aquarius, 7th house. This brought emotional complexity and relational sensitivity. Venus in Aries is a bold, fiery placement that brings passion, spontaneity, and a love of the chase into relationships. It's where Venus, the planet of love, beauty, and pleasure, takes on the assertive, adventurous qualities of Aries, and which are direct and daring in love, tending to make the first move. They're not shy about expressing attraction and often enjoy the thrill of pursuit. Marilyn was passionate and impulsive. Love was fast and intense. She fell hard and fast, but lost interest just as quickly when things became routine, limiting, or restrictive. And many things were restrictive in her life, societally and personally. Because of her independence and self-focus, she valued autonomy and resisted relationships when they felt too confining. Think of Joe DiMaggio. Their love style was energetic and self-expressive, but she also had a certain amount of self-centered tendencies, and her focus on personal desire sometimes overshadowed her partner's expected needs. She was really underneath everything. She's devoted to her freedom. Okay? Still, he remained devoted to her even after death, sending roses to her grave every week. Her perennial search for home, Pluto in Cancer in the 12th house, we can almost say perennial and elusive search. And her sense of identity related to all that home meant to her was an ever elusive, overshadowing element, and it also led her to take risks in love. She pursued or fell into relationships that were thrilling but unstable and unfulfilling for long. Her desire to sustain passion depended on developing the emotional depth and patience called for by Venus in Aries to maintain fulfilling relationships was undermined by her wounding and instability. Venus in Aries conjunct Chiron in Taurus. Yet, she strove to balance independence with intimacy, knowing she could thrive if she could be both autonomous and emotionally connected. It was easier for her to channel her boldness into creative or relationship or leadership roles as an artist, performer, and perhaps as a mentor in love-related fields. Where Marilyn's core values and motivations lay more on the surface of her life in her pursuit of passion and excitement, and being driven by a love of intensity and spontaneity, right? That's on one level. Going more deeply, her assertion of autonomy and independence compelled her to resist confinement, prompting decisive action when relationships or roles threatened her freedom. Her deep, often unconscious longing for belonging and identity, Pluto in Cancer in the 12th, motivated risky choices in love and life, even when they led to unstable conditions or undermined by her own instability. Like I had said, her Venusian desire for self-expression and energetic, self-centered love style translated through her work in acting and performance. As motives for diligence, her desires called her to cultivate emotional depth and patience, qualities that challenged her Venus and Aries nature in order to sustain meaningful connection, which is a seed for transforming wounds into wisdom. The Venus-Chiron conjunction in Taurus pushed her toward healing through creative leadership, mentoring, and emotionally resonant work, channeling boldness into purpose, thus closer to her soul intentions, rather than dissipating her energy in unstable relationships. She found steadiness by investing her passion into artistic and being mentored, right? Artistically and philosophically. I'll address that later. Marilyn's Mars in Pisces was expressed in a subtle but persistent drive, right? Often expressed through art and vulnerability. It was a mutable tool for her. Personally, she was not the shallow stereotype her acting character types often were. Her determination and goal-driven nature were behind her, using her sensuality and the expectations of the male-dominated industry as a means to achieve her goals, which, was undermining from the outside. She sought the power through men, she sought the powerful men, the right people, to put her forward for roles and to introduce her to other powerful people. She also had a strong supportive mentor relationship with Jane Russell, another actress, who helped Marilyn navigate through male-dominated Hollywood. Her Saturn in Scorpio shows intense emotional depth and karmic lessons around power and intimacy. And she had a very personal spiritual striving, which Saturn in Scorpio brings, and is one of the most intense and transformative placements in astrology. It blends Saturn's discipline, structure, and karmic lessons with Scorpio's depth, secrecy, and emotional power. Pluto in Cancer is a deeply emotional and generational placement that speaks to transformation through family roots and the inner emotional world. Pluto intensifies Cancer's emotional nature, calling to profound inner shifts. Individuals may undergo deep healing through confronting buried feelings, ancestral trauma, or family secrets. This placement reflects a deep need for emotional and physical security. It manifests as protectiveness, fear of loss, or a drive to create or search for safe, nurturing environments amid chaos. Cancer rules the home and family, and Pluto here often brings karmic lessons tied to lineage. There may be a strong pull toward understanding one's roots, reshaping family roles, or healing generational wounds. Her chart reflects a tension of mythic proportions between beauty and pain, fame and fragility. The Moon, Saturn, Pluto triad gave her emotional depth and karmic weight, while Venus and Mars added allure and creative fire. Marilyn's T-square of Saturn in Scorpio, squaring her Moon conjunct Jupiter in Aquarius, in opposition to Neptune in Leo, does indeed point out the absence of her father, Saturn retrograde, square Neptune, and her mother's schizophrenia, Moon Jupiter, opposition to Neptune. This remained as an unstable foundation for her stability, yet regardless of societal hindrances and definitions which overlooked her capabilities, she developed her own discipline, boundaries, and long-term commitment. Her Mars, Uranus, Pisces, and Eris and Hades in Aries in the 8th house all point to her experiences of sexual abuse. Her later use of sexual energy and being relegated into a popular image of risque and kittenish sexuality. Regardless, she strove to develop her drive, initiative, and tactical persistence. Neptune, squared by Saturn and in conjunct with Mars, which is trining Saturn, provides a picture of her early life set up for a life of challenges and possibilities for transforming karma. She expressed her diligence through courage, action, and strategic pursuit within her career. Spiritual diligence through discipline, compassion, and holding emotional boundaries was evident when she supported Ella Fitzgerald by knowing her presence, her own presence, Marilyn's presence in the front row in the Hollywood Club Mocambo would draw people to Ella, who was considered to be unglamorous, and she wasn't going to be booked. Ella was forever grateful, but distanced herself from her because, Marilyn's shadow side of drug use. The Moon is waning to Jupiter and is applying to its conjunction to Jupiter with a 7-degree orb. Her ability to adapt, develop, and mature, the Moon, within her definition of self is united with her sense of preservation, increase, and compensation of self, which came through her individual social awareness and assimilation of social experiences, Jupiter. Marilyn had the urge to be a self-sustained individual while participating in the social realm, with her Aquarian sacrifice of individuality to being a social entity, was pressured and challenged to the degree she embraced and tried to think and act beyond the mainstream collective social attitudes of the day. Yet, she was challenged. Arthur Miller, the acclaimed playwright, was her third husband and had a significant intellectual connection. Monroe fiercely supported Miller when he faced the House of Un-American Activities Committee, and even when it risked her own career. Her relationships she had relationships with President John F. Kennedy and his brother, Attorney General RFK. Through the extent and nature of these relationships are subjects of debate and speculation. Her alleged affairs, particularly with Robert F. Kennedy, are a central point of discussion and theories surrounding her death, which is a whole other study. The septile quality of the 7-degree orb between Moon and Jupiter indicates her unique, even unpredictable manner of expanding out into the world, helping others and attracting some unique people into her life. All these are supporting her keeping her diligence in movement. The Moon is applying with a 2-degree orb to its opposition to Neptune, Jupiter separating with a 4-degree orb from its opposition to Neptune. And Marilyn's self-awareness and how she projected herself was through adaptability and her expansive emotional expressions, which led her to developing objectivity, actualizing her goals, and having confrontations with others. So to the degree that she thought or felt she was a failure, the failure was realized and led to a disintegration of purpose and a sense of self. Her increasing reliance on drugs undermined any strength she developed. And these dynamics were magnified by the moon's 2-degree orb to the opposition. Jupiter's role in this waning opposition to Neptune can be seen in her expanding developments of new forms, born out of her imagination of realizing possibilities into the social sphere. This opposition was expressed through the karmic crises she came up against in her relationships. Jupiter's 4-degree orb to its opposition to Neptune accentuated this relationship as a constructive impulse towards the establishment of herself and her thoughts and her inclusive and spiritual values. Moon is in the last degrees of a waning square, and Jupiter is in the waxing square to Saturn. The moon is applying with a 2-degree orb to its square to Saturn, and Jupiter is separating with a 5-degree orb to its square to Saturn. And Saturn is the release or trigger point in this T-square of Marilyn's, and this is an expression of her evolutionary need to transform, Scorpio, her definition of personal identity, Saturn, and how she focuses on and actualizes herself and what she projects out into the world. On a daily basis, Moon, her instinctual feeling responses were an avenue for her to relate to the world and adapt to people. The waning square manifested as a development of new forms in her actions. And as she released what she developed as an individual to start a new cycle, she encountered restrictions and limitations. Her retrograde Saturn indicates her weak definitions and defenses against the outer world, even though she had inner strength and endurance. The moon's 2-degree orb to its square to Saturn brings the confrontational intensity of the opposition she faced as she instinctively put herself out into the world. The manners in which Marilyn expanded herself through her activity in the social realm, Jupiter, indicates her intention to maintain her sovereignty and uniqueness in society, especially in regards to her relationships. And this intention was to compensate and increase her sense of individuality and keep her identity intact and maintained, in spite of her weak inner defenses. Her process of establishing a sound basis of self for action, the waxing square to Saturn, is magnified by Jupiter's 5-degree orb to its square to Saturn. This orb carries the nature of the quintile, manifesting towards individualistic creativity and selfhood. This was to counterbalance the challenge of Saturn retrograde, weakened personal identity and inner security. Saturn is in waxing square to Neptune. Saturn is applying to its square to Neptune with a 1-degree orb, right, bringing an impersonal, unconscious expression to this aspect, making its effects more instinctual by nature. The crisis in establishing an ego-building activity, waxing square to Neptune, worked positively in Marilyn and how she broke with old values and stood for newer, more universal values, as evidenced by how she stood up and supported her friend Ella Fitzgerald in the face of expectations and prejudices regarding beauty, right? Her spiritual openness was apparent when Marilyn was introduced to Rudolf Steiner's writings and lectures by her favorite drama teacher, Michael Chekhov. A few years before her death, in 1964, Marilyn met Dame Edith Sitwell, who was researching for an article on Hollywood. The two spent their time mainly talking about Rudolf Steiner, interestingly enough, in his autobiography, which Marilyn was reading at the time, even though Dame Edith did not directly connect herself with Rudolf Steiner or anthroposophy. She recognized the importance of his work in the world. The negative expression manifested in Neptune's corrosive, diffusive effects on her sense of self and the way of projecting upon the world, Neptune in the first house, which degenerated into drug use and undermined her need and ability to establish a secure identity. Her struggling endeavor to establish strength of self was often overshadowed by her otherworldly, almost elfin demeanor. Marilyn's Pluto in Cancer called for her transformation and power through diligence through her own shadow work, relentless inner evolution and rebirth, and the fulfilling of her soul contract with herself and the spiritual world. Now, she was able to be diligent in mental multitasking and agile verbal sparring. Her intentions for this life was clear, yet very challenged, and her drug use did sabotage her endeavors, as did the manipulations by others. So this is my example for this first part on the study of diligence. The second part, working on diligence, will be an example in the chart of Greta Thunberg. And until then, I will see you later.